A great pleasure for me to give you a warm welcome from side of ESEIA and Graz University of Technology. We're very glad to have an interesting evening today with a great speech of Teresa Ponce de Leão. She is on the one hand Vice President of ESEIA and on the other hand Chairperson of the Board of Directors of the Portuguese National Energy and Geology Laboratory. And a warm welcome and a big hand to Teresa.
Great.
I also welcome Ignacio Asenjo from the DG Energy from the European Commission. Also a warm welcome and glad to have you here. You will give the first response to the lecture of Teresa, and the second response will be done from Franz Prettenthaler, the Director of Joanneum Research Life Institute. And I also welcome Rupert Baumgartner, Professor of Sustainable Management at Graz University, who will make the moderation of the discussion later on. My name is Harald Kainz. I was for a long time President of ESEIA and for the last 12 years also Rector of Graz University of Technology. So we are very glad to have a lot of participants this evening in this online lecture from 7 countries in Europe, from 3 countries in Africa, and from 18 organizations in total, also from the business side, but most are coming from education and research organizations. I would also welcome from the business sector Susanne Veskolash and Wolfgang Zitz, and on behalf of the Academica Hoad Sang from Abo Academy University from Finland, and I also welcome Josef Peter Ordner from Graz University of Technology, Rupert Baumgartner I have called for, and Fabio Montagnini from the Cyprus Institute of Technology, and also our friends from Finland, Mika Malki and Jarmo Jaskinen from the Southern Finland University of Applied Science. Also I welcome Fabio Silva from Tyndall National University and Cristina Ferreira and other members from the LNEG, and also all the members of the ESEIA office and our colleagues from Tanzania and Cape Verde, which are also connected with us. And I'm glad to welcome also Brigitte Hasevent, who is responsible for the organization of this lecture. And I hand over to Brigitte and ask you to lead us to this evening.
Thank you very much, Harald. Just a short welcome from my side. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. I just wanted to say why we're doing this lecture series, which was actually an idea of our honorary president, Harald Kainz, some time ago, actually 1 or almost 2 years ago. We started this lecture series for one reason, because there are lots of transformation activities going on. New solutions are needed for climate neutral Europe and the world, and therefore a lot of changes are happening, but I think there is not enough time for discussion and debate. And so these evenings, they're a very welcome opportunity to present different kinds of positions on different topics we have in the ESEIA context. Our working groups are very much involved in this, and so this time the topic will be land use. And that's all I have to say from my side, except for I would like to thank my team very much for setting up this this lecture evening, especially Hannah Lee, who has done most of the work to set this up tonight. So I will hand over to the chair, Rupert. The word is yours. So thanks.
Yeah, Brigitte, thank you very much for handing over, and especially thank you for inviting me to chair this ESEIA lecture. It's really an honor to do that and a pleasure. Just a few words to myself. I'm from the Department of Environmental System Sciences at the University of Graz, focusing in my work on sustainability on the product level and on the company level. Related to the topic of land use somehow in our work on sustainability assessment, life cycle assessment. And I'm very curious on the topic and on the discussion we have this evening. I think this topic is really an extremely relevant one. We have all in our minds the challenge of climate change or climate crisis. But if you look into the planetary boundaries concept of some other issues also to deal with, many of them are related also to land use, caused by land use changes or they influence land use. The most prominent one is the topic of biodiversity. And Europe, I would say, is a dense continent. We have many people on a limited area with a lot of economic activities. And also with the idea to switch our energy system to a more renewable and climate neutral and just energy system, the pressure on land use might increase or will increase. On the other hand, we have ideas in the Green Deal to preserve nature and to to preserve nature, to work on the renaturation law, etc. So also from this side, we have factors to consider if we discuss land use, and this lecture is a very good opportunity for doing that, especially as ESEIA was able to invite to create a very interesting panel for this evening. Our first input, the keynote, so to say, will be presented by Teresa Ponce de Leão. Rector Kainz already introduced her very briefly, so she's a very experienced scientist from Portugal, working at the Portuguese National Energy Laboratory, involved in ESEIA for many years, and impressive track record in the respected field for this evening. So very warm welcome also from my side. After this first 30 minutes of, so to say, setting the scene and deep dive into the topic, we'll have the first response by Ignacio Asenjo from the European Commission, Policy Officer at the DG for Energy. He's a political scientist, expert in international relation, very much related on international relations from the European Union, for instance, regarding China. And he will give us more insights into the European policies in regard to the upcoming European election, a very interesting topic. Maybe we can come to that a bit later in the discussion. And the second response will be done by Franz Prettenthaler, Director of Joanneum Research Life Institute since 2016. The Life Institute has a very broad spectrum of research regarding economic and environmental sustainability, and we will bring maybe a more regional insight into the topic. So we'll have a 30-minute presentation by Teresa, followed by these two responses, and then we have a panel and a joint discussion. So to make use and learn together, to profit all together from this evening. This is was my short intro. So Teresa, if you are ready, we could start with your input.
Thank you, Rupert. Let me try to put my presentation, which I think it's online. It's on show mode.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, you can see it. So I will talk to you the next 20 to 30 minutes or so. And first of all, I would like to say that I have the honor once again to be at the ESEIA meeting as a lecturer. My former participation was in person in Graz, which is fantastic, and was after directly coming from COP27 in Sharm el Sheikh. This presentation is very much needed for the European Commission, as we can see from some documents that I will show in my presentation. And it's I can tell you that it's a result also of some talks with the director of DGNR, Paula Pinho, which is very keen on this topic. And but I would not like to start without giving my compliments to Harald Hans, and with whom we have discussed a lot during many years, and with a big compliment to the members of the panel, and also to Brigitte and her team. I think I didn't forget anyone. And okay, I already said the members of the panel and the sponsors. So this is the topic. I would like to very quickly tell you a little bit about LNEG, because it's about how we prepare to give an answer to how to ensure sustainable land use. LNEG is a research and technology operator from the Ministry of Environment and Energy now, because in the past was from the Minister of Environment and Climate Action. We promote technological innovation for greater competitiveness of the Portuguese economy towards sustainable growth. We do this with interface of research and development and technology adoption by private sector. We work a lot with private sector. We also are very focused on the internationalization through partnerships with global organizations. So in a nutshell, also we have technological infrastructures. We have collabs. Collabs are collaborative labs, half participated by industry, half participated by academia. We coordinate the BioRef collab. We work on research, consulting, we have laboratories, we also do cartography, because as the name may indicate, we work on geology, and we are the geological survey of Portugal. We have a geoportal, which is very important for the land use. We also have the development of software and geo-repository and library that serves the communities, the Portuguese community. So we are organized into several units for research. The geological resources, geological and geological risk, mineral technology, geoinformation, resources for economy, energy and built environment, integration of renewables energy into the energy system, bioenergy and biorefineries, materials for energy and renewable energy. We have these figures. I will not go into detail, but we have 3 million euros of services income. Our budget is to 20 million euros, half for personnel, half with finance contracts and contracts with companies. So, and now what we do for to serve public policy. We have since long made bridges among science, public policy and market, and we participate in several organizations For public policy, we have developed some documents for our government, like the hydrogen strategy, the biomethane strategy. We participate very actively in the national climate and national plan for climate action. And we also have a lot of collaboration with within the market with our main companies for energy, but also consultant companies. And we also act in the innovation side. So normally, as long as we develop a new knowledge for public policies or of interest of community, we publish policy briefs, which are available in our web portal and available freely in our web portal, most of them in English. This is very important. We work based on partnerships, and besides ESEIA, we are members and very active members at the level of the Executive Committee of the European Energy Research Alliance. We are at the Executive Committee of the Eurogeo surveys. We participate in the Committee for Energy and Technology in the International Energy Agency, and why this is important, and also with ESEIA, and why this is important, because we cross-match different informations from different areas. And I can give you an example. Now, and as we'll see, we have the need to understand very well how to evolve regarding the critical raw materials, and how to evolve regarding the integration of renewable energy systems. And with this, we work together we introduced these topics. We introduced the ERA to Eurogeo service and the Eurogeo service to ERA, and also we integrated some of this knowledge talking with one of the directors of DG RTD, Vicente Beruto, which is part of the International Energy Agency Committee for Energy Technology and Development, and we introduced some topics together. We also are very active members at the United Nations Energy Committee for Europe, and at this level, we are part of expert groups where we study how to efficiently manage resources, as I will show in detail in a while. So I will not, and these are the Clean Hydrogen Partnership we are part of, and others. So what does this slide mean? It means that since, I would say, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, we are very worried how to match the research cycle with the innovation cycle. We know that it's difficult to produce the research results and apply them to innovation. But this is from a work made together with the European Energy Research Alliance. And this is a picture I like very much to show that looks at the bigger loop of the research cycle and tries to implement, to take the most of the knowledge that is developed by scientists to and transform that knowledge into innovation. And this is very important because recently I've been in a meeting with Menolitor, which is a Portuguese that succeeded to Lamy in the evaluation of the framework program, now the 10th program. And he really highlighted this. We we have not to look to the TRLs as we used to see them before, that came from the space industry, but look how we can accelerate the results of knowledge development by science into the implementation. And this is why I like this picture very much. Now, a little bit looking at the context of the European policy, we are coming, some months already passed, but we are coming from COP28, where I have the pleasure to participate. And this was the first COP where the mention to transition to go away from fossil fuels was referred. And that brings us a lot of responsibilities. We were also ahead of some decisions that were already being worked out at European Commission, which is tripling renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency till 2030. So this is a big responsibility, and we need to accelerate, as we know that the pace it takes, the time it takes to develop renewable energy projects is not in line with these time schedules that are here presented. So we also have another important reform, which is the European market design reform, that aims to boost renewables without putting the weight of the prices into the economies, not into the into the users. I come from a meeting that I had today where this was very well discussed, and we have to protect vulnerable customers. So we have to find a way to develop our renewable energy to cope with the zero prices sometimes from renewables, and to give profit to the investors, but also protect consumers. We have seen recently the decision that resulted in the Critical Resources Materials, which is the Critical Resources Materials Act, and we need to go for policies that protect Europe from materials from other places, whether how can I say, the policies are not in line with the European policies, and we need the materials for the energy transition. So we also have the gas package, which established the common internal market rules for renewable and natural gases and hydrogen. And hydrogen is very important. And we have to look at the new regulation for gas, but also at the same time, we have to have concern for those countries which think differently. So here we do not have a common rule for all. And we have emergency measures that were extended. So you know that we had some measures to protect consumers when after the invasion of Ukraine from Russia, but we needed to extend those measures, and these include accelerated permitting for renewables, gas price cap, and joint gas purchasing, like we did with COVID vaccine. So we have urgency in wrapping up many of these policies. we also have the European Scientific Advisory Board for Climate Change, and we need to look at the implementation of what this advisory group tells us to do. This calls for policies with a greater role in incentivizing energy and material demand reduction. And this is a very important topic, because this means that we have to look at circularity, we have to look at value chains, we have to look at how to do the same with the reduction of consumption of materials and being efficient. I would say at this point, I do not have any slide on this, but we have to degrowth. So we have to think how to degrowth. So you have the European carbon management and some goals that were committed by the countries. And we have launched Europe's first ever offshore network development plans. And this is a key issue, because we were discussing this week with our government about how to develop our plan offshore, which is 10 gigawatts. But we still 2030, we are thinking to start developing 2 gigawatts. But we need to ensure the investors that they can bid, can go for an auction where they are paid for the costs they will have in the investments, and also to think how the transmission line will match all these, and how the transmission system operators will divide the costs with these investments. And for this we need the rules. We also have that know that in the Net Zero Industrial Act, which is about the industry in Europe, that something that appeared recently is the geothermal energy that should be enhanced in Europe. What about land use resources? So the EU Net Zero Industry Act is very important to rule all this. We will have net zero strategic projects and where we should give priority to projects essential to reinforce the resilience and the competitiveness of European industry. We need to have CO2 injection capacity target, and with carbon capture and storage projects that have to be supported by the European Commission and by the countries. We need to facilitate access to markets with enhancing sustainability and resilience with the creation of criteria for these, namely for auctions, as I told before about the offshore wind plans. We also have a big problem. It's about skills. We need to have in academias the development of the right skills to align with these projects, to be able to be hired by these investment projects. And we know we have a lot of difficulty with skills. We need to accelerate permitting, which is very important. We know that a project to be licensed takes a lot of years, and we have to be able to accelerate this. And this is one of the key topics where the European Commission looks at. We have to attract investment, and we have other markets from Asia and from United Nations of America. And for that, we have the European Hydrogen Bank, but which I think it's not completely working for the investments, to attract investment. And we have to go for new regulation issues. This is very much in line with the acceleration of permitting. And for that, we need to have regulatory sandbox that show us how to be very innovative in regulations. And what did we do at LNEG? Since 2020, and this is, we used the pandemic to look strategically at the future. So the first piece of work was the Green Hydrogen Atlas, and this we looked at the industrial risks, hazards, water capture, because we cannot use fresh water or should not use fresh water for hydrogen production, industrial emissions, and these were the determinants that affected the licensing process. We looked at protected areas, and we talked about this before. Our chair talked about these protected areas, urban areas, agriculture areas, to identify the criteria to determine potential location and the exclusion of one location or exclusion of the projects regarding the criteria. We also looked at the distance to consumers, injection points in the gas network, and other transportation options, and how to store, mainly in salt caverns. And we did this, very important, we did this not alone. We did this with all the stakeholders around the hydrogen industry. And this was to identify the possibilities in relation to the infrastructure and available storage for transport and distribution of hydrogen. And we also looked at the renewable energy to produce hydrogen, because what we want is green hydrogen to power the electrolysis with renewable electricity. The result of this was, as you can see, the National Atlas for Hydrogen. Sorry, it is in Portuguese, but it is available in our web portal. You can download, and you can look in detail to this piece of work. So, sorry, I mean. So another piece of work that we are very proud of is about the technical potentials of renewables. We identified we are an institute, a research institute that in the past worked to identify the potential of renewables in Portugal. So we know the potential for solar, for wind in onshore and offshore. And we know also about the potential of our bioenergy. We have everything mapped in our web portal. And looking at all this, and in a transversal work within LNEG, we estimated renewable energy technical potentials in Portugal. Of course, it's not the potential as so, but it's the technical potentials of Portugal for wind, solar PV, concentrated solar plants, bioenergy, and oceans. And here in these figures, you can see the results that include already the current installed capacity. And you can see the mapping of the main places where different renewable technologies could be placed according to, in this case, according to the potential and the distance to the grid and the constraints from the cities and the proximity to houses. This is here in red. This is the result of this work, also available in our web portal. So, and then it was before, but recently, at 13th May, the Commission presents the, sorry, I made them, okay, because I have here, I don't know what, okay, I will continue like this. The Commission presents a guidance and recommendations to accelerate renewable energy and to roll out ahead of Repower EU. This was presented on the by the time of the Repower EU anniversary. We all know what it is. And it was released the guidance on designating renewables acceleration areas. But we already had made some work on this, and we had already presented this work to some responsibles of the European Commission, but mainly to Paulo Pinho, that met with us, and the results of these renewables acceleration areas are here presented. This is a very long work. I will not go into detail with everything, but we consider, again, this work is made in partnership with the Portuguese Environment Agency, with our Directorate General of Energy and Geology, with the Institute for Forestry, with the Institute for Patrimonial Protection, Heritage Protection, sorry, and others. And we identified several, in this case, it was several scenarios where in the mainland Portugal can have PV, wind onshore, implemented, and while minimizing the conflicts with other land use. And for this, we used all the constraints. We used the diversity constraints to start with what our share referred. We had constraints from aquifers. The presence of aquifers. We had constraints from mineral resources. We have constraints of distance to the existing houses. We had the constraints of agriculture mapping and our natural resources mapping. And you can see in detail all the constraints. We added, this was an exercise of summing up all the constraints. So we proposed to the government several scenarios where it is to the government to decide what he wants to implement or not. But it's a very complete work about how far we can go. So the most restrictive mapping, summing up all these constraints, is that we have 4% of our territory available for the implementation of renewable energy projects. After this, we participate in the working group for the definition. Yes?
Just a hint for the timing. So
okay, I'm almost finishing.
Yeah,
so
okay.
So how many time do I have?
Yeah, well, 2 or 3 minutes or so.
Okay, maybe 5 minutes. I will accelerate.
Yeah.
I will accelerate.
Okay.
So
Okay,
this is
thank
one
you.
of results. The other result was another work about identifying how far we could go with solar energy to decarbonize industry using the roofs of the plants and the surrounding areas. This is another one. So we have the Critical Raw Materials Act, where we work as geological survey. As you know, we have goals. I will not read them because you have it here. And we revised our mapping for critical raw materials, which is here in our web portal, is our role at Geological Survey. And this is the mapping of areas for lithium, where we have where the lithium has potential. This is how we work together with other companies in Portugal and institutes. And this is just to finish the stocktake. Stocktake was something that was mentioned in the last COP. And this means that we need to know what we are doing in our projects. We need to be accountable. We need to evaluate. So regarding this is giving some indications to the ESG, Environment, Social and Governance, for companies, but not only, because we can work together with the EU taxonomy and looking at different criteria and looking at projects from this point of view, looking at the whole value chain and identifying step by step how we can we are giving results for one of the projects, as you know, and do no harm to the other 5. So we need to evaluate our projects, and the United Nations Resource Management System is proposing a process to do this in an accountable way. So we also have new technologies, and geoengineering is being looked at, mainly geoengineering for looking at the role of solar radiation. This is an open view for other projects, and geoengineering for carbon capturing, like for instance the ambient carbon capture, as some companies already addressed us to know how to build a project on this. This is also some projects, possible projects of geoengineering, and I think this is the last one. Yes, and thank you for listening to me.
Great, Teresa, for this wonderful overview, clearly linking your many European initiatives and policies with your own work and all these different aspects. And you mentioned several interesting points. I'm sure we'll come back to them during the discussion. I've already several questions for you here. But first, I would invite Ignacio to respond and to give his insights to Teresa's presentation, or in general his viewpoint on the topic of land use from an more energy perspective, I assume, yeah, or energy policy perspective, I assume. The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Rupert. It's really a pleasure to be here at this ESEIA meeting. The initial invitation went to Director Paula Pino, that was mentioned by Ms. Ponce de Leão, but she could not attend, so she asked me to step in for her. I personally work in the unit in charge of renewables and energy system integration in DG Energy of the European Commission. Although indeed in my CV there is a lot of international experience, I have now been working for DG Energy for 5 years. First in the unit in charge of infrastructure, and now in this unit of renewable energy, where I follow more specifically solar energy, as well as some horizontal topics, including electricity grids. So thanks a lot to Ms. Ponce de Leão for the presentation. That was really interesting and very comprehensive. in the different elements that indeed touch into the issue of land use and renewable energy deployment. I will, of course, come back on some of the issues that she mentioned and then also explain some additional ones. I will do this not as an academic, of course, because I'm not, but presenting the European Commission point of view and the work that we are doing in this area. So I will focus on three specific aspects. First of all, the Renewable Energy Directive and the planning aspects that it introduced in its last revision. Secondly, the role of rooftops, of course. And thirdly, what we call innovative deployment of solar energy, including dual use specifically. These, I think, are three elements that are relatively novel in EU policy, and that all of them, I think, they stem from the realization of the importance of the subject that you bring in today, which is the needs for land use, for renewable energy deployment, and the potential conflicts with other land uses that may come from that. Already in the present, of course, we see that happening already, but also for the future more and more, since we still have a lot of acceleration needed to achieve our targets. So the Renewable Energy Directive was reviewed very recently. That was a proposal that was made in 2021, and then we amended that proposal 2 years ago in the REPowerEU package. The final version was adopted last year, and it's already enforced since the end of last year. And there we have this new objective of 42.5% of renewable energy share in the energy consumption in the European Union. We are currently around 23%, so we still have a steep slope to climb until 2030. That means that we still need further acceleration of deployment, especially on the wind side, and a better use of the renewable energy generation that we start to have as well. Let me focus on something that is new, that was not at all in the previous versions of the Renewable Energy Directive, which is a stress on planning aspects to ensure that there is an effort from central governments, in cooperation, of course, with regional and local authorities, to identify the land that is best suited for deployment of renewables, taking into account, in particular, the interaction of other land uses, and the potential, of course, of renewable energy, because the potential is not the same in all points in the geography of a member state, and of course, the environmental aspects of this deployment. There are two articles on this. One is on planning, and certainly I'm pretty sure that the Portuguese government will use all the output developed by the team of Ms. Ponce de Leão that she presented before. This is really exactly the kind of work that we expect member states to do, to be able to plan and decide more or less where are the areas that should be given priority for renewable deployment, to understand where is the potential. The process for this planning aspect is to understand, to adopt a target themselves. Of course, this they are doing already, how much renewables they need to deploy. And then from that, understand how much land and where they need that deployment to take place. So this is exactly the kind of analysis that needs to take place so that governments can take decisions on planning. The second article is more specifically on what we called renewable acceleration areas, which are areas that are identified where the environmental impact of renewable deployment is expected to be especially low. And these are areas where you can have a different permitting process that is more regional area permitting rather than project by project permitting, and where you would have a permit for the whole area, and then you would also have a kind of sub-permit for specific projects, but that are supported by that general permit that has been agreed beforehand. So renewable acceleration areas is something that is important Ms. Ponce de Leão showed precisely the adoption very recently of a guidance developed by colleagues in my unit on how to develop renewable acceleration areas by member states. So these are the two new planning aspects in the Renewable Energy Directive that so far have never addressed the issue of where deployment should be taking place. And in all those, and in general, there is always the idea of the promotion of dual use of land, also in the Renewable Energy Directive, that member states should consider to promote dual use of land as one of the best ways to reduce conflicts with other users of land, since by definition you are using the land for another activity at the same time, such as agri-PV. The second aspect is just to say that indeed we do think that as Commission, as DG Energy, we do think that rooftops have a great potential and that that potential has to be used. We can also disagree with some people who think that we can achieve our targets only with rooftops. That is a political tendency that has been notable in some member states, in some political parties. Simply the numbers don't add up. We don't think that we can reach our target only with rooftops and only with one technology, of course. But we do think prioritizing rooftops is, of course, a very good approach. And we adopted 2 years ago, as part of REPowerEU, an EU solar energy strategy. And in that solar energy strategy, we did indeed say that we wanted a priority on rooftops, and we launched so-called Solar Rooftops Initiative. 2 years have passed, and I'd like to highlight the two main outcomes of that Solar Rooftops Initiative. The first is the introduction of a solar mandate in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. It's a directive that existed before, that of course regulates the performance of buildings and put limits to energy consumption by buildings, especially on new buildings. That was revised recently, and we decided to introduce their solar mandate. The final version, after the negotiations with Council and Parliament, is less ambitious than the version that was proposed by the Commission, but it's still a mandate on buildings, especially on new buildings. All new buildings have to have solar PV installed. Solar installed. Because it can be solar PV, it can be solar thermal, and it can be also solar PV thermal, which is technology that's not very well known, but that combines both. So there's an obligation to install solar. That can also be building integrated solar. There will be implementing regulations of that solar mandate that will come in the future. It will first of all affect especially public buildings, but it will also affect other buildings, such as commercial buildings, when they are entering a renovation. So we have a solar mandate, and then we also approved in the electricity market design review, was also mentioned by Teresa, Ponce de Leão, we introduced energy sharing. Energy sharing is an extension of self-consumption. So we already had individual self-consumption. So the fact that you can put up panels on your own roof and consume from it. And we already have collective self-consumption, typically in a building. So in a multi-apartment building, you put panels, and that is shared among people living in the building. Some member states already have done collective self-consumption beyond the limits of the building, so that you can actually share that energy beyond the building. So in these energy sharing provisions in the Electricity Market Directive, we have now, was agreed very recently, we have now introduced energy sharing, regulated specifically how this is supposed to work. Collective self-consumption beyond the building. That means that I can have access as self-consumer to energy generated away from my house, from where I consume it. And that, of course, puts a lot of responsibility on the system operator that has to make the metering adjustment, but I don't want to enter into technical details. Why do I mention this? Because that means that we can make much better use of the available roofs. And that people, so when there is a demand for self-consumption by someone who cannot put up panels in their own roof, they can use someone else's roof if there is that possibility. So that demand can be satisfied now, which was not the case before this reform. So second block, rooftops. We think it's very important to minimize conflict use, land use conflicts. Third and final block, what we call innovative deployment. So when we adopted the solar energy strategy, we committed to issue a guidance to member states to help them to lift barriers, to tell them how we think they can lift barriers to what we call innovative forms of solar energy deployment. These forms of solar energy deployment are of two categories. Ones are about dual use of land or water, and the others are about product integration. So where the PV or the solar product is integrated in another product. Dual land use or water use are agri-PV, floating PV, and infrastructure integrated PV. And there clearly you are making a second use of the land on top of the energy generation. And of course that reduces in principle land conflicts, land pressures. Product integration are typically building integrated PV and also vehicle integrated PV, which we think has a lot of potential, but has not been unlocked yet. Probably the potential of vehicle integrated PV will really be used once there is a real rollout of electric vehicles in the future. What we are working on is a guidance to member states to facilitate this. I will not give you the full guidance now, of course. I would just like to underline on dual use of land some elements. There are significant barriers to the dual use of land from a purely regulatory perspective in many EU member states. In some member states, dual use of land, such as agri-PV, is simply not possible, because the land designation rules say this land is for agriculture, and either you transform it into industrial land to use it for PV, or you keep it in agriculture, and there's no way you can have both. In many member states, dual use of land is possible, but often there are other regulations that create problems, and in particular building regulations, because often these installations will be considered buildings and will need a building permit. But since building regulations do not contemplate this kind of installations, that makes it quite difficult for people who are in charge of interpreting these building regulations to give a permit in those cases. And then finally, there are often limitations that are given by the sectorial laws or financial aspects. So for instance, if you want to do floating PV, which also minimizes the use of land because you're using the lake. Normally floating PV, we talk about inland lakes and often artificial ones, such as in Portugal, by the way, that did a specific auction to use specific lakes, dam lakes. Yeah. If you want to do floating PV, then you have to look into the water regulations and see if the water regulations will allow you to install floating PV. But often floating water regulations are absolutely silent about energy generation installations. So in that case, it really depends on the interpretation of the person who is supposed to give you the permit. And on top of that, you could also have issues with building regulations I was mentioning before. So just to give you an idea of the kind of detail we're trying to go into, and to also, understand that dual use of land or water is actually quite novel, and that our existing regulations have not been thought for this, and that some member states are in the vanguard for this, and I can mention some of them. Italy, Germany, and France in particular have done a lot of efforts on agri-PV especially, but some other member states are really behind in this, and their regulations certainly do not allow agri-PV or floating PV depending on the different circumstances. So so that was the third aspect I wanted to mention, and the third work that I think is relevant for this discussion, that that we are doing. So the revision of the RED with new planning provisions, the priority on rooftops that we fully agree with, and the regulatory barriers to these innovative forms of deployment, including those that imply a dual use of land. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you, Ignacio, very much for this insights and this precise presentation of these three main areas. Franz, may I hand over to you for your insights? We can see your screen already somehow. We don't hear you yet.
This is why I have to switch back.
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Yeah, perfect. Can you see?
You have a classical board, no? Yeah.
Yes, I have a classical board, and actually maybe I'm the only person who is actually at the technical university right now.
Yeah. But if the slides would not work, you could use the board, but we see the slides already.
Good. No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the chance to talk to you. I'm very impressed, of course, about everything that has been said and how all the important things that we need to do and we need to achieve together are pursued on many levels. And we know that the Commission is doing a really good job to get more things done. I would now like to focus this issue of land use and renewable energy on some practical examples, case studies from here in Austria. And I would like to start with a problem statement, which is not only peculiar to Styria, where we have seen this late frost event for quite some time now. You can see the chart of apple harvest and wine harvest, and 8 out of 12 years really had a big problem, as you can see in the chart, because of late frost. Well, this is a consequence of climate change, because the early onset of the growing season, if you produce some durable crops where you cannot choose the time of growing the crop, you really have a problem. And we had this year the same problem in many parts of Europe. In northern Germany, apple harvest of 24 will be in great problem, but also wine in southern France. And so this is a typical land use problem that is related to climate change, but also the solution of it, of course, is not always in a way that we say, well, this is very nice to our landscapes. So to sustain production, we will see a lot of protected cultivation in the future. So whenever you grow permanent crops, you need infrastructure to protect this crop against climate change. Okay? And second observation, because of this, because of plant protection, here you see an infrared device that is protecting a vineyard, which is also used to protect strawberries, for example, etc., all over Europe, but it's only starting to be used. So because of plant protection, but also because of more automated systems in agriculture, the electricity consumption in agriculture goes up. But what does that mean? We will also have, from the demand side, more electrical infrastructure in our agricultural land uses. So of course, this is maybe a good argument for allowing agri-PV. But what I really would like to argue here is that we really see that the ecosphere and the technosphere are merging increasingly. Right here you have this is you can call it a farm. It's publicly owned, and we are doing research there. And you have got here the site where the agri-PV is, and you have here all, and on the right-hand side, all the other somehow protected durable crops. Can you make a difference in terms of landscape beauty, in terms of land use? Well, probably not. So if you already need to protect your crops anyway, why not use agri-PV to do exactly that? And this is what we are currently doing research on. And of course, these developments are not so long that we can have already results that, where you need probably sometimes 10 years to really make sure what is the effect of agri-PV on a durable crop. But if you just if you look at these two pictures, on the left-hand side, you see blossoms of peach trees after these spring frost events. So you have really very moderate blossoms. And on the right-hand side, it's unprotected. And then on the right-hand side, you can see exactly the same crop under agri-PV. And it has got much more blossoms. Of course, we will yet have to see what is the harvest. But we already observed in late November that on the right-hand side, where you had the agri-PV, the leaves were still on the trees, while they have fallen off the trees already on the left-hand side. So it's really, there are strong first hints that below agri-PV, you have a strongly increased vitality of the plant. And this is because it's protected against rain. And we have a very strong decrease of chemical plant protection. So there is really a double benefit of the double land use. So agri-PV, of course, there is a second benefit, a part of harvesting crops, that on the same land you can harvest electricity. But agri-PV positively influences adaptation to climate change of particular crops. So the second question I would like to raise now is, well, first I'll show you a comparison in the power generation course, sometimes you have some problems with shadows if you are in the countryside, but still and you can see this on the left hand side, but on the right hand side you can see electricity consumption per kilowatt peak harvested from agri-PV, which is in orange, and the rooftop version in blue. And you can see that there is, in average, a 12% increase of harvested energy per kilowatt peak. Of course, if you talk about the kilowatts per square meter, it's less because you cannot pack it as densely as on a rooftop. But still, the investment is more on the kilowatt peak, right? And so you have got also additional harvest, well, because it's a cooler condition, of course. If you have evapotranspiration, that's a cooling effect. If you've got the wind effect, etc., etc. So why? And this is the second, yeah, maybe also problem statement. Why do we dispense with these double benefits of agri-PV in cities? Ignacio said, okay, well, sometimes now we wished that we want to have more PV on the rooftops. And you can see this on the left hand side. This is right the out of my window. New buildings, everywhere PV. But on the right hand side, this is our rooftop in the science tower, where we exactly do the principle of agri-PV in cities. You can grow crops on roofs, and you can at the same time harvest energy on the same roof. So why don't we, as a major measure for adaptation in cities, also adopt agri-PV on our roofs in the cities? And of course, this will decrease the pressure for changing land use in other areas. So maybe I can show you a little bit this case. So of course we have got facade integrated PV cells that are rotating with the sun, and here you can see how we started with our little garden. That of course is a demonstrator for this kind of well, it's actually not a double benefit, but we believe that urban green roofs in the future, they really will help to cool the city. First benefit. Second benefit, they protect us from flash floods. What you see here on the right-hand side really are flood protection basins. Of course, they can produce food. They harvest electricity. Well, here we use the form of Graz cells, but you of course can do it also with ordinary PV. They can secure soil. Also a major issue. I mean, whenever we are paving our cities, we are hiding a resource that took ages, 10,000s of years to grow. So we really also need to secure this soil. And by the way, yeah, we improve living conditions. I know this because I go up there nearly every day, pick my salad for lunch. And in addition, we also created some jobs for less qualified people that
Franz, maybe 2 minutes or so, 1-2 minutes.
Okay,
that we can,
yeah, I'm
conclude
concluding.
discussion.
So it's easy to measure this this cooling function. So how much coolness, so to speak, do we generate in this tower? But what we really need to do is to look how we can evaluate all these benefits. And this is a European project, Invest for Nature, that we have the pleasure to coordinate, and where you can see that such nature-based solutions, well, in water management, of course, the benefits are highest because you protect, you're doing this flood protection, but also in urban surroundings, you have a value of more than $800 per hectare per year, just in additional benefits. And this is basically, well, here maybe you get an impression of the cost. Well, yeah, was it cheap? No, it was not cheap. We just had to move up all the soil on the rooftop, but actually it looks nice, and we harvest all year long. It is not a glass house, but it's really open, so it also has got negative degrees. And as a take-home messages I would like to offer you, yeah, climate change forces more and more food production into protected cultivation. Agri-PV can deliver a double benefit for plant protection. And also in cities, we should embrace agri-PV for nature-based solutions, or the other way around. Let us not only put PV on the roof, but let's combine it with nature-based solutions as urban farming, for example. Then, of course, we need to evaluate the multiple benefits of these nature-based solutions, because we need to trigger investments in this area. And only if there is an economic value to it, well, investment will take place. And there is a challenge that remains, because some of the benefits are public benefits, and some of the benefits are private. And it's not that easy to convince public investors, namely the government and the private investors, to join their efforts to make this particular synergy work. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much for this very nice presentation and these additional aspects you brought in. I like very much your statement on merging technosphere and ecosphere, highlighting also the density we have, I would say, in Europe, and brings this systemic perspective in how to deal with the resource of land into the perspective. The plan is now that we have a panel discussion. I would keep it a bit shorter and see whether and which questions we have from the audience, then to have a fruitful discussion. But I've seen an immediate reaction from Rector Kainz. I'll give you the word.
Okay, thank you, Rupert. So thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear these three presentations with a lot of hints and practical experience how to collect energy and how to produce food and other things. I will give some additional information. I suppose we will not only have dual use, we will try to get triple use. So if you make things like agro PV, then you can have at the roof soil and a meadow, yeah, where you can plant food, but you also can have a meadow, and it's also storage of water. So we can store about 150 millimeters of water on each roof if we have soil and a meadow or soil and other plants. And it's extremely much because heavy rain has about 50 millimeters up. So we can protect the cities from flood if we use the roofs also for storage of water. And then we have energy consumption, we have food production, and we have retention of water. And there's also another, I think I heard from Brian Norton, our president of ESEIA. He told us that the combined panels of solar energy and PV have a lot of advantages, because the cooling of the PV panels helps to get more than 10% more electric energy of the panels, and you can use the same area for heating energy as well as for electric power. So that's also some comments from my side. But I congratulate all three speakers. It was really great to hear your.
Yes, thank you for this additional comment and remark. And yeah, I would like to start the discussion with a question maybe not directly related to the presentations, but giving the timing of our discussion, maybe a very relevant question. What we have seen over the last months is increasing resistance against some policy initiatives. Yeah, so the Green Deal, which was one of the main projects, I would say, from the current Commission, became under pressure. Yeah, we have seen the discussion on the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, and especially in Austria, we are discussing the resistance against the nature restoration law, as our federal states are opposing it. So my question is to the panelists: how do you see this resistance we observe here against the Green Deal and some elements of the Green Deal from your professional perspective, yeah, from your scientific perspective in case of Teresa and Franz, or from your policy or professional perspective in case of you, Ignacio? Maybe you can share your thoughts or insights on that.
Well, as you understand, as official of the European Commission, I cannot take political positions, that's for sure, but I can give you what is the current position of the Commission and of DG Energy, which is quite simply that the Green Deal remains our priority, that at least from the perspective of the energy aspects of the Green Deal, everything has been fully delivered, including the review of the electricity market, including the Renewable Energy Directive, the review of the energy performance of buildings. I mean, the list is very, very long of new legislation. And why? Because the growth of renewable energy and the decarbonization of the energy system is also about energy security. So the package that we adopted with REPowerEU 2 years ago was a response to the war of aggressions of Russia against Ukraine and the impact that that had on energy markets. The realization that we need to do something about that. And of course, we did a lot about that in the area of natural gas itself, but we also took an acceleration of renewable energy as the best way to reduce our external dependencies on fossil fuels and on the price of fossil fuels. And we actually did see, I don't know if it is because of European Commission policies, but we did see an acceleration of deployment, in particular in the solar area, with 28 gigawatt installed in 2021 before the aggression of Russia against Ukraine, and 56 gigawatts, so double, installed in 2023, and that was 2/3 of those were rooftops. So we need to understand that the energy transition, the decarbonization of our energy system is also a matter of energy security, and is also a matter of energy affordability, because the cheapest source of energy is, of course, renewable energy, because you don't pay fossil fuels for it. So we need to move towards that. It has implications in terms of energy system, but we don't think from our perspective that any new future commission, of course, we don't know what is the majority in the parliament, but we don't think that any future commission will be questioning the legacy of the Green Deal on the energy aspect of it.
Thank you. I fully understand that you can't make more political statements, but I think it's very interesting that you brought in this geopolitical perspective. I think we forget sometimes in our discussions that these policies also have this effect and are also interrelated in that regard. But Teresa, what is your viewpoint here?
Me unmute. Regarding this point, we have had some examples here in Portugal, and I will mention two. One is the extraction of lithium, which is not directly related with renewables, but it's related with materials for renewables. And what I think that lacked in the past is to look at the perception of people and to address the social awareness before deciding, before proposing projects. This is very important. And I think our lithium projects are now in a phase of limbo. What I can say is are stopped, although some now got the license, because people were not sufficiently addressed. There is another problem regarding social awareness, which is the wind offshore. Wind offshore needs to tackle the fisheries, the fisher business before going with projects ahead. In this case, we had already some talks with the fisheries, and we have something in advance, because we have a pilot project. Some other countries also have, but we have the pilot project of Viana do Castelo. And what was seen is that after the pilot project, the fishers increased in number. So but we have to talk with the fishermen and to explain and to address them. So social awareness is key for these projects to go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yeah, important point is social awareness, and in the case of Portugal, you see still a policy support for the Green Deal.
Sorry, I couldn't catch.
In case of Portugal, you see still policy support for the Green Deal nationally.
Yes, we have, of course, we have policy support for the European Green Deal, but we are still discussing with the government, and a lot of working groups are going on with their work to give advice to the government in several projects, mainly now the offshore wind, but also other projects. For instance, the lithium projects are very important.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Franz, do you have also insights to share?
I think we need to be very careful that the frustration that some business leaders have with Europe as a business location does not spill over to the population, and that the Green Deal is is being made as a scapegoat for this frustration. Well, first of all, is the frustration of some business leaders, has it a justifiable foundation? Well, yes. I think we are all frustrated that Europe is financing a lot of good research, and the US with the Inflation Reduction Act just does like this and gets the economic growth out of it. But do we have to be frustrated about the European Common Market? No, it is working. Is it the wrong regulation that we have in Europe? No, we have a functioning emission trading system. The carbon border adjustment mechanism will just start to work in 2026. So also we have got the right regulation here in place. But I really think we need to be more thoughtful how we can make growth out of these rightful decisions. And one of the things that we need to do is to have also a common financial market. We do not have a capital market in Europe. That's also one reason why the companies go to the US, because risk capital, if you need to take risks for your renewable energy startups or whatever, you go to the US and you don't get it in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This is a very important additional aspect. Teresa, you wanna?
Can I jump in? I think we need to, as you mentioned, the carbon border adjustment mechanisms that are going to take place in 2016, but we have to have measures to account for the value chains, what's happening during the whole value chain. We have what we see, for instance, in the biofuel certification, the material for the production of biofuels may come or can come from other areas in the world where the European rules are not fulfilled, but they have a certificate when they enter the country, and then they go ahead with that certificate, and then the following certificates during the value chain are inside the country. And this means that some companies, for instance, Portuguese companies, prefer to import the biofuel material because they have less problems. That we lack an accountable way to look at the whole value chain, but from the very beginning to in Europe. I know that Germany has a more fair system to account in this case for biofuels. That's one of the value chain I know well, because we certify biofuels. But we need to have that accountability. And United States do that in some way. So they have the ARA Act, which is not good for Europe, but they do that some way, because I know that a company from, it's not Portuguese now, it's Chinese, but they would like to build a PV power plant, and they could not build it because they did have to certify whether the products were imported with fair jobs. And so, and they just gave up from the project. So we need measures like that.
Mm-hmm. Ignacio, you are raising your hand.
Yeah, no, I like also to react on this, because I was saying before that I don't think the next Commission will question at least the energy aspects of the Green Deal. But one thing that I think is important for the future is indeed to look at the industrial aspects of the Green Deal, and what we call the Green Deal Industrial Plan, actually. And the main development of that under this mandate has been the Net Zero Industry Act that was also presented by Ms. Ponce de Leão, where we have objectives and to develop homegrown technologies for all clean energy technologies and manufacturing capacity for those. That is very, very ambitious and will be very difficult to achieve. But I mean, in terms of competitiveness, I think first of all, because it's of course a topic that is very crucial at this point. We have the LETA report that was already adopted and the Draghi report that is coming up, where the issue indeed of the capital markets is crucial, and we really hope that we'll make progress in the next mandate on capital markets, because that's very important. But first of all, we think we need to realize and ensure that renewable energy and lower prices for the actual generation of electricity contribute to the competitiveness of the European industry, because the energy cost of the European industry compared to the US and China is one of the main issues that they have today. So for that, we need more renewables, we need power purchase agreements, which is the way that they can actually buy directly and source directly renewables. We need grids to follow with that. And of course, we need electrification of a lot of processes that today depend on natural gas and so on geopolitical factors that we don't control. And with that, it's very difficult to compete with natural gas made in the US. We'll never compete with those prices for sure, and also with coal-based processes in China. So that's the first thing. The second is, can we really ensure that a large part of the clean energy products that we consume, solar panels, batteries, windmills, etc., are produced in the European Union? And I think this is really one of the key questions for the future, because clearly the European Union is an open economy. It will not become a closed economy overnight. And without tariffs, it is really a challenge to ensure that, because of the competition from China in particular. So this is a question that we need to ask ourselves and see exactly what we understand for a Green Deal industrial policy for the next mandate. I think that will be a very interesting debate over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And we have this debate already, everywhere. Yeah, regarding competitiveness. I would like to open up the floor to the audience. So do we have questions, comments from someone? I haven't seen anything in the chat, but Brigitte, you're raising your hand. At least I see your hand. I don't know whether there are others.
So one question to Teresa. I really liked your maps, in different colors, the mapping and also the constraints you were listing. Quite a few constraints on land use, of course, and you said 4% of the territory remain for renewable energy production, if I understood correctly. Does that mean for Portugal this is enough in the medium long term, or how do you see also the role of rooftops? Are they needed in addition? So it's just about the quantity to understand a bit whether the 4% are a realistic figure.
Yes, that's a good question. The 4% are, it depends how many renewable projects we have, but to fulfill the whole energy transition, it's very, very near, but maybe we should look at other scenarios. For instance, one of the restrictions that was imposed by ourselves at LNEG, it was the aquifers, because our people from geology said we didn't include the aquifers. But what happens is that the main industry is placed over the aquifers, and now the new airport. so maybe we were too strict, and maybe we have to relax some constraints. The rooftops are really important, and that's why we made the work with industry to decarbonize industry, and it was using industrial rooftops. But as Ignacio speak about, the rooftops for the energy communities are very important, and a lot can be made in cities. And it's not only to fulfill the target, but because it's better for the energy system. If you have energy communities, you don't you do not have the need of having so many connections with the grid, because they are not needed. So really the rooftops are important to explore, and mainly when we are talking about energy communities. The problem is in Portugal is that the licensing again, it's taking too long. We have some energy communities in Porto and here in Lisboa that still do not produce for in benefit of the owners of the roofs. So that's the main issue here. It's the licensing, not the area for projects.
Actually, I have two more questions, one for Franz and one for Ignacio. So because we already heard about the Portuguese case, I was going to ask Franz, because he knows everything about Austria, not only about Austria, but certainly know what the situation, the energy, renewable energy situation is in Austria. Maybe you can give a short overview, and how much of the land, I mean, dedicated land we need in Styria to cover the demand side. And another question, well, that will go to Ignacio later, is kind of who are the best in class, if you probably have an overview in Europe, which countries are furthest along, and where you're happy with them mostly, and maybe if you know of some best practice cases you can also mention. So, Franz.
Yeah, well, maybe for our listeners, well, Styria, the state that we are in is a very industrial state, and it is very clear to everyone working in industry that we cannot produce all the energy locally. We very often forget that 80% of the energy that is in use today comes in liquid or gas from somewhere else. And so some topics that we are dealing with is, of course, where, from a strategic point of view, could the energy come from in form of green hydrogen. And so we did some calculations that we believe that Austria will benefit much more from everything that happens in the south. So so there are some considerations that green hydrogen could come from Northern Africa via Italy to southern Austria, but also the Spanish trajectory is interesting for us. We did the calculations, and that's feasible. Every ton of green hydrogen that has to be transported by ship will not make our industry being competitive anymore. And one option that we were also considering, of course, it depends on how soon peace can be restored in the Ukraine, but the Ukraine would be a very interesting supply of green hydrogen for Austria, because everything that comes from the north, so especially Norway, etc., are interesting sources of green hydrogen, but yeah, there is so much industry that will consume that to the north of Austria that we are not very confident that we will get a lot of that. So, but of course, I mean, every rooftop that does not have a PV on it, and as I would like to argue, some form of green infrastructure in addition is a pity and should not be sustained.
Thanks for your question as well. Well, first of all, I like to underline that things are accelerating at EU level as well. So in the electricity sector in particular, things are going much faster. We had, I think, 22% of the electricity from wind and solar in 2022. And last year we had 27% roughly. This year we hope to have more than 30%. And last year, renewables went over 40% of all electricity, not only wind and solar, but also with hydro, of course. So things are accelerating in the electricity sector, and I personally think that the main challenge we have now is to ensure more consumption of electricity, so electrification, to ensure that we shift from fossil-based consumption in transport, industry, and heating towards electricity, so that we can decarbonize the rest of the economy as well. Talking about specific member states, there are a couple of those. So apart from the best known, of course, we all know about the Energiewende and Germany, and I think it's important to underline that they did manage to get out of nuclear without massively increasing emissions, and that last year they showed that they were really very good at expanding renewables and reducing the role of coal. The role of fossil-based resources in electricity went below 25% in the EU as a whole in the beginning of this year. So this is really very, very low levels for coal and fossils in general. The Netherlands is a great example of how fast things can go. They were very, very late in the game, the Netherlands. They started really in earnest only around 5 years ago, but they are decarbonizing their electricity system very quickly with both solar and wind, and they actually have a lot of problems in the grid and negative prices almost every day. So they are going very, very fast, and that I think is quite a success story. Of course, Spain and Portugal are showing the way. Portugal's shares of renewables are very, very high today, around 75% or more. And then there are some perhaps surprising examples in Eastern countries. Poland is a very good solar example, and also installing a lot of wind recently. And finally, their share of coal-based generation is going below 60%. That's still, of course, very high, but things are changing quickly in Poland. And with the new government, we could perhaps expect that things will further accelerate. Hungary is one of the highest shares of solar in the world per capita, actually. So it's really not per capita, I think it's the share of electricity is one of the highest in the world in Hungary, which shows that this does not only depend on political willingness. Sometimes if the conditions are right in the private sector, things can go also very fast. So we don't depend on, as Commission, we think it's very important that we don't depend on the political orientation of the national government, and that there is enough capacity also in the private sector to deploy renewables on their own. And there are some very good member states that are doing that. In general, last year was really the year where you really saw solar deployment in virtually all member states, and some member states that had very low solar deployment in the past, such as Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria, did start in earnest last year. So things are really very widespread now in terms of deployment.
Thank you for this. To the horizon, our European member states and the activities. This is always very interesting. I think we never have all 27 on our radar, what they are really doing. Looking at the time, are there any quick, specific questions we could still address from someone in the audience? Any urgent topic? I mean, there are still many topics to explore, but
just add something to what Ignacio said.
Please.
It's amazing you talked about Poland, because some years ago I was impressed by the amount of solar panels and electric vehicle chargers in the public buildings, and so this is the result.
Yes, they had a good system of support to rooftop deployment, and that went very fast for a few years. Then they adjusted that. Growth slowed a bit, but still remain at quite high levels of deployment. What you miss in Poland is more utility scale, because there are a lot of constraints and limitations on some wind onshore. But they do have the rooftop, and they do have the wind offshore that is starting to come in with ambitious projects. So the shares in the electricity production are really changing. Finally, still 60% of production with coal is of course very problematic, but it's changing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Brigitte, should we come to the conclusions?
Yeah, if you ask me so, yes. But before you come to the conclusions, because this is our last lecture before the European elections, I'd like to point out that, you know, it is very important. I think we remind everyone, and I suppose we don't need to remind people in this lecture, the attendance, but that the European elections are very important. Everyone should go and get as many people to get to the elections, because that's going to help Europe a lot. And well, that's all I have to say. And now it's for you to wrap.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I won't repeat all the interventions and presentations we had, but I think we had a really broad spectrum of issues covered. So when Teresa presented in the relation between European policies and their work they're doing in Portugal to understand the potential for energy production, for renewables, and also related to land use in Portugal. And Teresa had two very interesting side remarks. One was we have to degrowth. Yeah, was one sentence in your presentation. I think this would be a topic for another ESEIA lecture next year or so. Yeah, how does the idea of reducing demand, is it green degrowth? Is it sustainable green growth? What is the European perspective on that? Ignacio mentioned competitiveness as an issue. And the other topic, at least in the sustainability community, we are very hesitate to discuss it, is geoengineering. Yeah, is this a role or not? I think this could be another topic. Yeah, so you caused already some reflections and food for thought for us. Ignacio was very clear in his 3 building blocks, explaining the role of the Renewable Energy Directive and also the success of it so far in And also, but also not only the success, but also the hard way is still to go. They have from 23 to more than 42% in 6 years. Yeah, so I think you were very positive in the examples, but examples are good, but they need to motivate every actor to go faster and further in that area. And the rooftop solar, was related also then to the interventions from Franz Prettenthaler and the comments from Harald Kainz. They're not only focusing on one benefit, but multiple benefits from it. And the innovative deployment. Yeah, we have many examples in Austria already about this energy sharing communities. I think this definitely will go forward because we see that the classical utility companies are reducing their compensations at the moment. Yeah, so there will be much more room and interest from private side in participating in that. Yeah, and Franz, as I said, this clear picture on merging eco and technosphere is a good narrative, I think. And clearly also showing the challenges of adapting to a changing climate in agriculture. Yeah, it's a simple effect. We have to think about how to adapt to these new climate cycles and this negative impacts on productivity and what else will come there, and this idea of nature-based solutions. So overall, I think it was very interesting, at least for me. I learned a lot. We discussed a bit more energy than land use, but energy is always the core. Yeah, so energy is the most central question. Yeah, and a very last remark from Franz on how to bait industries. Yeah, it's not only electricity. You're absolutely right. We need also for chemical processes, steel production, cement, etc. Not only electricity, but hydrogen as source. Yeah, with that, I think I'm really happy with what I've heard and our discussion. Any final words from Harald as former president or from Brigitte as our general manager?
Harald.
Okay, so
First the beauty.
everybody who has spent these 2 hours to hear the presentations and to have part in the discussion. I thank Brigitte and her team very much for organizing this lecture and also the completely lecture series. We have heard that there are some new topics for the next years, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next ESEIA lectures in autumn. So thank you very much for participating. Best greetings to Brussels, best greetings to Portugal and to all other countries, especially to our friends in Africa.